Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your Christmas day so far. It may take something of a Christmas miracle to save this Los Angeles Thieves team. According to certain pundits and analysts around the scenes, they reckon this LA Thieves team is kind of chalked already. No leadership, no direction, potential internal conflict. Will it take some serious changes to try and make this Thieves team competitive as they have been the last couple of seasons? But to be honest, a far superior roster back then. Very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. We'll dive straight into it of course today. This is a nade-shot in kind of like 100 Thieves Secret Santa Christmas themed video from quite some time ago, but yes, it might take quite something to arrive for this Thieves team to turn it around as it presently stands. The guys on the reverse route were talking about this just the other day, many talking points they got across here, but I definitely wanted to dive into the discussion here on the Thieves team for this Christmas Day special episode. We'll be back with the regularly scheduled content tomorrow, you guys know how it goes, but Thieves are in a very interesting spot. Since they've really come into the CDL, they've been expected to be the contender right up there at the top of the league. They eventually got there, right? I mean, let's be honest, you look at the teams that have won the World Championships over the last few years since the CDL era. Dallas Empire, that was formerly Envy, now is kind of OpTic, but never technically OpTic. FaZe won it the year after that. Then it was Thieves, of course, in the Vanguard season. Most recently, the Subliners. So of the top theoretical teams in the league, the OpTics, the FaZes, New York, Toronto, Thieves, those have kind of been the top 5 in the CDL era, really. Most of those have now won a World Championship ring. Toronto, OpTic have not, but of course, even Thieves, when they were back in the Black Ops 4 days when they first came in, well, they first came in Black Ops 3, but I'm not going to disrespect nade-shot when talking about that saga again. So the Black Ops 4 season, they won the back-to-back events, they made the Grand Finals of the World Championship, but of course after that they were never in the CDL initially. They didn't get a spot, they eventually got it off Hex because of the whole OpTic acquisition, the OGLA drama, you guys know how the story went. Then though, LA Thieves come in, kind of get slammed in Cold War, not a good season, make all these changes, bit of a disaster. Vanguard though, massive turnarounds, they stuck it out as a team, they eventually got really good, won back-to-back events including the World Championship that year, and then of course they stuck it out again and became the first ever team to break the Champs curse by winning the events last year at Major 4. Champs though did not go to plan, and as we've seen across many different situations in esports at the moment, the money has basically run dry. So Thieves this season were in a very different situation. They needed to make some serious changes, didn't have the budget, Octane was going to retire anyway, Envoy was getting offers elsewhere. From Boston, from Toronto, he ends up going to Canada with the Toronto Ultra for the new season. Kenny, we know he's now on OpTic, Drazah's now on FaZe. It was probably somewhat inevitable, but Thieves couldn't afford the money anymore, pay cuts were coming through, they had to have more of a budget roster. This is the team they put together. An interesting one when it was first formed. A team with certainly a lot of upside if they get things right, but as it's seen so far, that's not necessarily been the case. There were also big rumours that aBeZy and Lins were linked to this team. That was actually considered to be some of the preferences of the guys involved, but that never happened. They got Ghosty, Cammy, Afro, JoeDeceives. So Zuma said he's heard aBeZy was there, then as we've seen before, that turned out to not be the case. And now we find ourselves in a spot where Thieves have had a difficult start to the season. And I'll just share the clip here from the reverse suite when Aches and Marky B and Parasite are talking about Thieves and saying that, as far as Aches is concerned at least, it's time to blow it up immediately. He reckons they should be the first team to make a roster change. Marky B reckons no leadership, no direction, it's time to go.
I'm not really high on this roster to begin with. Like, don't let me pretend like I think this Thieves team has a high ceiling. I think they're destined for middle of the pack, and I think they should be, you know, knowing nade-shot, knowing this camp of wanting to win. Like, obviously they had some cost savings here to get this roster together, but like, they should, in my opinion, should be jumping at the first roster change. This roster change should have Thieves written all over it. And they're not good at anything, right? Like, am I crazy? They're just like a master of none team. Like, they're not a particularly good hardpoint, S&D, control. They're just kind of all over the board for me, and even their players are pretty inconsistent. Like, I think today, not to call Cammy out, but like, he had a horrible Sunday compared to like how he played the other day. So I don't know. I don't even know what to think with these guys. I just think they're just super inconsistent as a whole.
I mean, I don't think that's going to change much. I'm going to be honest, just looking at the players they have on their team. However, what I will say is that these teams, this middle of the pack, because I think that's kind of where the discussion is going now with like the whole like Thieves and the Bostons, is like a lot of people thought that Thieves was going to be that dark horse team, right? A lot of people in the coaches poll and all that stuff were saying that Thieves is probably going to be around that 5 to 6 mark, but they haven't showed me that they are capable of even reaching that mark yet. I don't know what they're doing.
Even their comms. Did you guys hear their listenings?
Yeah.
Like, they were just flustered. They didn't seem like they had an agenda to follow. Yeah, like, I heard multiple times, I think it was Dango's like, chill out, guys. Like I feel like they're just, I think they're getting frustrated as well because I think they feel the way we think about them, right? They're just not exceptional at anything. And to your point, Chris, like, another thing is they don't really have like maps that they can say they're the best at. Like, even, in the past, our bottom teams have had their good maps. Like LAG was a good example. Before today, it was like, don't play those guys on high-rise S&D ever, right? Like, it's their clear-cut best map. I don't feel like teams are afraid of playing Thieves on any map. Like, they don't have anything that's just like, avoid them on that. So yeah, I think they have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, their comms are really concerning. I think that obviously it is the worst possible time to go into listening. Don't get me wrong; they're coming in.
Yeah.
They're down 2-0. They're getting destroyed. They've just been 1v2'd by DiamondCon on the first round. Like, it's a very weird situation to go into listening for and expect to hear like great comms. But yeah, it seems like there's a real lack of like leadership and direction there. Obviously, I think Dan is supposed to be that guy. Obviously, I've worked with Cammy and Joe previously. I don't necessarily believe that they're leadership type figures. So for me, I think it's a big concern there is just that team composition. Who's really going to step up in those tough moments when it comes down to being 2-0 down against a team that you're probably coming in expecting to destroy?
So do you guys agree with this perception on the Los Angeles Thieves? They're in a tricky spot going forward. Not the start to the season they would have wanted. It's not been an absolute unmitigated disaster, but there's just a few reasons, as the guys are mentioning, that make it feel like a difficult position to turn around at the moment, especially the result against the Gorillas. I think this was the big one, really. The results they had elsewhere so far were not ideal, but they were somewhat acceptable. Getting 3-0'd by Gorillas. Now, sure, they always tend to lose this matchup for whatever reason, even when Thieves' team were actually top contenders, winning championships. Okay, online, because they were based out of LA, and they still are, they've never been quite as good as they potentially could be on LAN. But LAG have always dominated this matchup for whatever reason. And even this year with a Gorillas team that was theoretically, not great, let's be honest, right? I mean, the power rankings were this Gorillas team were going to be 12th best, worst team right in the league by a margin. And they're coming in 3-0 the Thieves pretty comprehensively just the other day. So this was the series. It was a relatively close Karachi. The subbase was such a weird one because I guess both parties knew it was over. If you guys remember this map, it was so strange how for the last 2 minutes, both teams are basically just playing for kills. It seems like Thieves had given up on trying to make the comeback. Gorillas kind of knew they had it in the bag. So it was going to go to time. It was such a weird game. So anyway, Thieves lose this one. They lose the search and destroy. They get slammed on the high-rise control. And that's a quick 3-0 loss. It's not looking good for their stat line at all. And we can see this across most of the series they play. They've played 4 series so far. They're currently 1-3, one of the bottom teams of the league. Now, they've got a victory, right? That's more than Minnesota Rocker have. Every other team also has a win on the board somewhere. And are Thieves the worst team in the league? No. There's Rocker, there's Ravens, there's Vegas down there. There's a few weak teams at the moment. But Thieves, honestly, aren't too far away. Now, they did beat Boston. They lost to Surge in the first series they played. Again, it wasn't completely crushing. They did win the control, but they have lost an awful lot of close hardpoints already this season, which is not necessarily a good sign. This was their only victory so far against Boston. They kind of crushed them this series. But again, most series they've lost have either been relatively close ones or a relatively close one. In this case, it was a throw against Boston, very well played, but Boston didn't have a good series here. They went on to have a great series against the Toronto Ultra. So both of these teams in a tricky spot, but at least Boston have an impressive victory on the board. On that final day, Boston 3-0'd Toronto, Thieves got 3-0'd by Gorillas. So that kind of shows the two different tales so far, and it was again a close map set against FaZe. 252-30, 3-2 on the control, 6-4 in the search, but the numbers don't necessarily play that out right. They kind of got slammed on the KD category, even though the maps kind of look close, and at the end of the day, it was a 3-0. So this is what the team's KDs currently look like, and it's not pretty, right? Everyone is quite deep in the red. The best numbers go to JoeDeceives, really. Then you've got Afro and Ghosty around about a 0.92, 0.93. Then Cammy's at a 0.89. So Arguably, JoeDeceives has been their most impressive player so far, especially given the fact that, you know, he's on the SMG a lot of the time. To me, Afro's probably been the second best just because at least he's had some takeover moments. It's not like he's been great all the time, but he has had certain maps where he has taken over and won them certain situations. Ignore the map record again, this isn't quite accurate. The match record, however, is. But it's not looking pretty, is it, for Thieves? Compared to where they've been recently, and you simply cannot afford to be bad online. Sure, they might go to LAN and be okay, but they've not got the experience of an Octane, a Kenny, a Drazah, and Envoy of the last couple of seasons. They don't have those players anymore on their roster. They now have a younger team, a team with less experience. Sure, Cammy's been around quite a while. He's had several years now in the CDL, but Ghosty, if you want to consider him to be the IGL, pretty young player. Afro, JoeDeceives, Cammy rounding out the team. You're not expecting them to have the same performance jump on LAN as the previous LA Thieves iteration did. And especially this year, sure, LAN, there's more points that are carries because they've increased the number, but there's also 7 online qualifiers. So you start out 1 in 3, it's not necessarily looking good. And we can actually look here in a second at their upcoming matches. So these are the ones they play up until the end of January. Okay, for some reason that was showing the Major 4 qualifiers, but we'll have a look at it here on the CDL website. So these are the remaining 3 games. They play Toronto, they play New York, and their final game is up against the Ravens. So the Ravens should be a dub, but they played Toronto and New York, 2 theoretical top 4 teams. Now sure, Boston slammed Toronto the other day, but I'm expecting Ultra to come diffy into the new year. So let's just take that at face value that they'll probably lose to Ultra New York. That puts them 2 in 5. That's going to be a loser's bracket start, which is obviously, ignore this by the way, that's Major 4 qualifiers, but that's not going to be enough, right? If they start 2 in 5 and they don't make winners, you know, realistically, they have to win all 3 of those series to feel confident in a winner's bracket start, especially because they got 3-0 slammed by Gorillas and 3-0 slammed by FaZe. So their map count is not exactly great. So they're in a tough spot, and they go into the new year looking at these matches thinking, well, they have to really turn it around to not make the losers bracket, and that is going to be a massive challenge. Now, we did see this in Thieves, the vibes are immaculate, in which this video, Shane said, well, what about that? We only complained 1 time in practice this week, and guess what? We won the series. We haven't seen any other, apparently, vibes, right, from behind the scenes in this situation, because I imagine the vibes haven't been so good. And this was the concern with the team going into the season about the whole Ghosty, Cammy, AR situation. We know that at the end of last year, Dashy and Ghosty, there was a bit of friction there. Ghosty, you know, even Shotzzy talked about it, that he was not necessarily a fun teammate to have at times in practice, complaining about things, coming up with various excuses and all this stuff, apparently at the very least. So we've heard those rumours. Now he's on Thieves. We're now hearing similar rumours happening again. The issue is, for Ghosty, is like, well, you're not really going to get rid of Ghosty, right? Because he's still a great player, has probably a very bright future ahead of him. It's maybe about moulding him to be a teammate that can be maybe somewhat less abrasive to his teammates. So I guess the player you're probably looking at has got to be Cammy at the moment, just because Cold War Cammy, it doesn't seem like he's come back anytime soon. And he's probably been their weakest player so far. Is a one-man change enough? Is that going to change the team environment? Do you want to bring more experience in, maybe? Then again, who do you even get right? If you had to get rid of Cammy, you know, what about Gunless? What about, you know, Donnie Temp? Like, there's a few options you could put in there instead. Donnie Temp, of course, was on this organization before. So there's a couple of things I think Thieves have to think about, but it will be interesting to see what they decide to do, just because in Cold War, they made so many changes and it didn't work out for them. The last couple of years, they've made like no changes and it worked out very well. But I'm not sure this team has quite the same temperament and quite the same ability to recover from difficult situations than the previous Thieves did. Maybe that can be drilled into these guys over time, but I'm not sure that if the chemistry and the enjoyment playing with each other is gone already and there is no leadership, there's no direction, then I'm not sure that these guys are going to be able to recover in the same way that the previous Thieves has been able to. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on what you would do if you were making the calls for this roster. Hope you enjoy your Christmas day. I'll be back tomorrow as always with the regularly scheduled programming. Thanks for watching as always. Take care and I'll see you next time.